I am Leena Agrawal with Office of eLearning at East Tennessee State University. We have our honored guest, Dr. Vandana Shiva, with us here. She has traveled all the way from India and is a renowned face in the areas of environment, globalization, ecofeminism, and many other social issues around the globe. We are extremely honored to have her here today. Namaste and welcome, Dr. Vandana. We are pleased to have you here.
My pleasure too, especially with all these blooms.
It is a very beautiful weather. So how are you?
I'm very well.
So you're just coming from India, you're well rested and...
In fact, now I'm going back to India, but tomorrow I start my return journey.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would just like to ask you a couple of questions.
Sure.
And everybody would like to know your vision in the areas of ecofeminism and what your current drive in this area.
Well, a few hundred years ago, an assumption, a very false assumption was made that nature is dead.
Yes.
And the idea of thinking about her as Mother Earth were mistaken and superstitious. And with it went the assumption that women are unproductive, they are just the background, they are the second sex. And I think those two assumptions are both related as well as at the root of the ecological destruction we see all around us. So my vision right now about building a philosophy that's different from the destructive, appropriating, dominating philosophy that has ruled us for a few hundred years is to recognize the earth as a living Mother Earth who gives us so much. And through that, to also recognize that women have creativity, women produce, women are part of society, not a second sex.
Yes, I actually read somewhere online you mentioned that we should involve women in agriculture.
I don't think we have to involve women in agriculture. We have to see that they do
do.
the majority of food production.
They're part of it.
They're the majority of farmers in the world. I wrote a report for the Food and Agriculture Organization years ago, around 82, 83, that most farmers of the world are women.
Yes.
And it's usually forgotten because normally the ad has, in America, a man sitting on a tractor, and in India, a man with a turban on his field. Women have always been made invisible, and they've been made invisible in the food and agriculture system, which they contribute so hugely to. So we don't have to bring women to it, we've just to see.
Yes, especially in the villages, and if you go around, you will see women working in the farms all the time, but they're just not visible.
But not only in the villages.
Yeah.
I think to the extent that there's food, I've just passed this extremely ugly sort of giant burger, giant sausage ad.
Yes.
In my view, that's not food. Junk food is not food, it's junk. To the extent there's food, there's an invisible woman cooking the food somewhere.
True.
It's in cities too. And I don't believe only women should cook. I think all of society should cook.
Yes.
And women should be the teachers for a revival of respect for food and our health and the health of the planet.
We completely agree with this. Another thing we would like to ask you is, when you compare India with US, what is your ideas when it comes to ecofeminism? How would you compare India with US?
Well, I think in India, even though women are subjugated, there's also this deep, deep sense of Shakti, of women as a symbol of another power. And I think that alternative imagination has been much more subjugated in the US. So very often what happens is women try and catch up with how men have dominated, and become the model of catching up. I don't think we have to catch up. We just have to be on a different road. And I think all human beings should be more womanly.
Have their own identity.
Yes,
I mean, there's
absolutely.
nothing to follow. I mean, just to be yourself. And so what would be your take-home message for people of East Tennessee?
One that, I've just traveled about 10 days in this country.
Yes.
And I have to say, in my 10 days, this is the most beautiful place I've come to.
Thank you.
And there's a tendency, if society decides what will be treated as the center. And in the US, the center is usually the outskirts, the west and the eastern coast. It's not the center, it's the outside. Or the Midwest, which to me is a very sad area. And I think for the people of this beautiful area, defending its beauty, its diversity, its ecological integrity, and I'm sure with ecological integrity, there's huge cultural integrity, which someone like me, of course, doesn't have the experience of, but I can imagine it, to defend that.
Yeah,
to defend
maintain
that.
the greenery and
Maintain the greenery, the livelihoods of a different kind, and just be proud of being from this mountain region.
I have seen quite a bit of your interviews. You're so energetic and positive. How do you stay so positive? What is the secret behind your positive attitude all the time?
The secret of my positivity is, look at this amazing, I mean, that tree would have shed every leaf
Yes.
through the winter, and look how it's blossoming.
Yeah.
And look at all these white blossoms and pink blossoms. I mean, just the power of the universe, the power of creation,
Yeah.
is to not give up,
Always
to
look at-
constantly renew, to constantly come alive. And why we humans are part of this amazing creation, and we should not think of ourselves as outside it, who have burnout and boredom and depression. Just put yourself back in nature and it all gets solved.
Yeah, these days, if you see especially youngsters, they are more depressed than ever. I
Yes,
mean, they have this negative flow all the time. It's very hard to stay positive in this. And giving out this message is going to help everyone.
Yeah.
So-
But you know, I think so. A globalized economy is treating young people very unfairly. It's not letting them dream a future. It's creating threats and fear. And I think for that reason, we need to shift from saying what's good for the market to saying what's good for human being, what's good for future generations. In India, we used to think of the seventh generation. Native Americans here always thought of the seventh generation. And that's the way to give back the future to the future generations.
Yeah, and especially I was reading in Indian magazines and newspapers, like these days, especially youth are going into suicide mode and all that. I mean, the
Everywhere.
expectation level is so high, people are not going in a positive direction.
And it's not just a question of expectation levels being high. Expectations are being taken to the skies,
Yes.
and opportunities are being stolen from under the feet of people. That combination is a deadly combination.
Yeah.
And that's why we need much more rooted cultures, much more rooted economies. And it's not going backwards, it's going forwards.
What I love about India is today everything is so organic. Here, to maintain that organic, you have to be like, it's not easy here in US to stay organic.
But the organic revolution is happening here.
yes,
And I think places like these mountains
yeah.
are the place where it can be strongest.
Yes, thank you so much for your
Thank you.
time,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Shiva. We really appreciate you being here. Thank you.